Let's keep talking Bees and Habs because you can't talk about this rivalry enough. And we're going to do so with our next guest here, Marco D'Amico, senior editor, RG Media, co-host of the Star D'Amico show. Marco, how are you, man? Welcome to the show.
Doing great, guys. Thanks for having me. How are you guys doing?
Of course. It's really sick to meet you, finally.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine. And being able to talk Bruins, Canadians, I think it's probably the greatest rivalry in hockey.
Very poetic.
Casey was just talking with our last guest about this is kind of a fun place to pick up. Obviously, when these teams faced off about a month ago at this time, the 3-2 Bruins win, it started with fireworks right out of the hop. You know, you had Zadorov dropping the gloves and sort of set the tone for the evening.
Very well,
yeah.
Marco.
Do we begin this game the same way, whether it's Zadorov or Janot or somebody different? Do the fireworks off the opening puck drop happen again?
I think the Canadians were at a different point in time at that point. They were reeling in terms of where they were in the standings. Had lost a lot of games in a row. Jaden Struble, who was the player that courageously fought Nikita Zadorov, was looking to start a little something and get his team in it. I don't know that the Canadians are at the same point right now because they do have a significant motivating factor that will likely be Phillip Danault's debut or re-debut with the Montreal Canadiens. So I don't know that it will start that way, but I have no doubt that it may get that way as they get into, maybe the second or third period, because Montreal and Boston right there in the Eastern Conference run in the Atlantic for a spot in the playoffs. So it's always going to be an important four-point game, and when it's these two teams, you got to watch out.
Oh, yeah. And there's a number of characters on both teams that at any moment are just ready for the fireworks to take place. I got a few guys in mind, but before we dive deeper into the physicality, you brought up a very important note. Reuniting with this team, and you saw this team post immediately what this is going to mean. I mean, Caulfield, too, was just like, here we go. What is this going to mean, especially against a Bruins team in a rivalry setting? Because when a guy's excited to reunite with someone and you don't have to wait too long for an acclimatization period, that can be a bit of a scary edge for a team.
Yeah, well, I think what Phil Danault does is it just takes a load off of the top line, right? Like, the way that I see, for example, having a guy like Fraser Minton in Boston gives a lot of strength down the middle. For the Bruins, you have Lindholm, you have Zaka, you have the ability to put Middlestad at center if you want. So it gives the Bruins options. Well, acquiring Phil Danault is exactly the same thing for Montreal. It gives them options. He's able to come in, knows a lot of the players already there, Suzuki, Caulfield, Gallagher, you name it. But it also takes a load off of Nick Suzuki because that top line, although it's the Canadiens' best offensive line, has also been used as a shutdown line for the better part of 2 years. While getting a guy like Phil Danault, you could take a lot of that pressure off of Nick Suzuki, have him focus more on the offense, and he will take care of those defensive matchups, which are ever more of a challenge on the road.
Oh, yeah, and that's going to be something interesting to see, and I'd love to get your perspective, too, because you mentioned that this Canadiens team is in a different point of this season, especially a point of play. Tell me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like they've balanced out their time not only in the offensive zone, but in the defensive zone, and that can be scary when you're going against a team that's trying to get out of their defensive zone a lot more. So what's kind of helped them be so balanced, not only attacking, but defending?
I think one kind of led to the other, right? So because they've kind of shored up on the defensive side, because they're not necessarily playing too chaotically in their own end, what they've done better is they've protected the slot. And I think if you're able to protect that high danger area, you cut off passes, you're able to keep guys to the extremities, you're able to force mistakes, the puck goes back the other way, your transition game takes over, and you spend more time in the offensive zone. So one necessarily leads to the under in the system of Martin St. Louis. And what they've done better, I found, in complement to what they've done in the defensive zone, is they're less cute with the puck, I would say, offensively. They're going to the high danger areas. They're not complicating their game, getting pucks on net, going for rebounds. And if you look at where the Canadiens have been most successful in the last week and a half to 2 weeks, it's because they're driving play to the difficult areas, and they're finding success in being able to convert in those plays. So the more they're able to do that, and the more they're able to flesh out a little bit more secondary scoring, we saw it on the Canadiens' kid line last night against the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's what's going to allow them to be a little bit more effective in being able to roll three lines against a deeper offensive team like, say, the Bruins.
Bruins have struggled, as we know, over their last handful. It's a little bit surprising in general, just with how well they've played in recent weeks, but more so the fact that it's happened at home, where the Bruins generally have been exceptional this season. And just, again, given all of that, David Pastrnak, who's, not a literal captain, kind of de facto captain of this team, has come out, called this game a must-win, even in December, looking at that just in a way to right the ship. Now, I don't view anything as a must-win in December, but I think it's the right attitude for the dressing room to have. How do the Canadiens look at this? We know there's going to be the extra juice just because it is the rivalry, and I'm sure for them they're looking to get even off of what happened last month, but what's the outlook going in?
I think the Canadiens are at the same point as the Bruins now, where every game is a must-win in the sense that the Eastern Conference is ridiculously tight. There's only one team under 500. We've never seen that before at this stage of the season, so it is hyper-competitive. You have no choice. And the Boston Bruins are ultimately a team that the Canadiens could very much face in the playoffs. If they're first seed, second seed, third seed in the Atlantic, or a wild card team. So it's important to be able to have that kind of ability to match up against them and to be able to play up to their level. And I think right now with the Bruins, especially, what we saw was an outlier increase in offensive production. The shooting percentages were higher. They were getting a lot of puck luck. And sometimes you run into an area where that puck luck just isn't there. You lose a couple of games. But playing against your heated rival is a really good way to bounce back. Well, the Canadiens did exactly that over the last couple of weeks. And, you've seen their game kind of mature. But they've addressed every single game as a must-win simply because having a bad week could take you from being second in the Atlantic to being second to last in the Atlantic. And that's how quick it's going right now. Teams are cognizant of that, and that's what's making the compete level, I would say, far higher already in the month of December than we've seen it in previous seasons.
Absolutely. Well, you kind of already alluded to it, but we have a tweet here from you about one of the, pillars of success as of late, the kid line, as you just referred to it. And more importantly, the kid line strikes again. Slafkovsky is one guy that I've enjoyed watching since he joined Montreal. But talk more about just the success that they have found and what a pillar they have been for this Montreal team and where this chemistry has just really started to pop off, especially Demidov. I mean, people didn't realize how quick he was going to be impactful for his team, and that doesn't always result in goals. That results in everything else that he's doing out there.
Well, I like that you bring up Demidov because he really, Ivan has done a really good job of diversifying his game. He's a skilled player. We know it. One-on-one, he's got incredible hands. But there's more to hockey, or at least professional hockey in North America, than simply just being a dangle. And I think that he's been able to add those layers to his game that have made him strong on the forecheck, more cognizant defensively, smarter in the neutral zone. And then you throw in a Juraj Slafkovsky who, against all odds, removed from the top line and immediately starts to flourish as his own independent line driver. And those two have found considerable amount of chemistry together and being able to find each other on the ice. Both have excellent vision. Juraj Slafkovsky, what he doesn't have in one-on-one puck skills, he makes up for with his size, with his reach, and his ability to create space for his teammates. And then the missing piece, the link, is Oliver Kapanen, who is tied for the lead in goal scoring for a rookie, which I don't think many people saw coming at the beginning of the season. But he just plays a strong two-way game, and he doesn't overcomplicate it. In the defensive zone, he plays deep, helps the defenseman, gets the puck out. In the neutral zone, he lets Demidov and Slafkovsky do their thing. And in the offensive zone, again, very simple, just goes to the front of the net, waits for a pass, and he's got a good enough shot that we've seen his success rate this season, 11 goals.
So the Bruins goaltender situation is, a little fuzzy just because of the way these guys have played of late, but it's still a better situation than what the Habs are in right now because you guys obviously aren't at full health. As a matter of fact, a local kid, or at least local to Boston College, Jacob Fowler, you tweeted about him recently, had a nice performance. See here, a dream come true to be able to play the Bell Center against the Penguins in the preseason. Imagine what he's feeling now. Just shut them out. First regular season encounter against, one of his childhood teams. So what do you make of what's happening in the crease there for Montreal at the moment?
It's opportunity. I feel like when there's injury or when a player doesn't, live up to their standards, it's always the next man up, and it's always an opportunity for a young kid. I think folks watching this show have had the privilege of watching Boston College and Boston University and most of the Beanpot teams. And, you know, Jacob Fowler was a big part of that with the Boston College Eagles. It's just a really strong team. That roster was loaded. And if you ask any of those forwards, Cutter Gauthiers, you ask Will Smiths, you ask Gabe Perreault, all those guys are going to say the backbone of our team was Jacob Fowler, because he might not have been the busiest, but whenever they needed a big save, he was there. And it's something that he's continued to do in his transition to the American Hockey League. He's done so in his transition to the NHL. The only thing right now with the Canadiens is, where do you go from here? Because the Canadiens, you know, we're talking about history and the, you know, the rivalry with the Bruins. Let us all go back to 2008. There was a rivalry there with the Bruins at the time. They met in the playoffs, and a young Carey Price was the #1 goalie at that time. They had just traded Cristobal Huet to Washington. It's almost eerie to this situation where the Canadiens have a young, you know, Jakub Dobeš, a young Jacob Fowler, and a struggling Montembeault, and they're not quite sure what to do yet. They're still trying to figure that out. Well, it seems very much like 07-08 for the Montreal Canadiens in that regard, where they need to figure out what they're going to do, because the way that Jacob Fowler is playing, or at least trending, this young man looks like he's going to be one of the better young American goalies to come up in the system. And boy, have there been many of late.
Oh, yeah. And from the BC perspective, I just remember how people were questioning, like, was this the right time for Fowler? And so for him to find success and to be making a name for himself at one of the biggest organizations, I mean, we can be supportive of that to a degree. Something else that plays a huge role in teams trending in the right direction is leadership. We got to talk about Josh Anderson and just kind of how he's re-identified himself for this team and kind of the voice that he's had for this locker room, because we see with the Bruins, different voices resonate at different times, but we've seen guys that we didn't put in the leadership category originally be a big voice for the success this Bruins team has found throughout the season.
Yeah, well, with the Montreal Canadiens, it's been a little bit of a leadership by committee. Like, yes, Nick Suzuki is the captain. He's a quiet leader. He does stand up when he needs to. But Josh Anderson is the kind of guy that is loud, and not just to his teammates, but also referees, the opposition. You know, a guy that sets the tone. He's very physical, plays with a lot of emotion. And so the team kind of rallies around him when he gets up and he is able to play his game. We saw it in the playoffs against the Washington Capitals. That bench brawl between him and Tom Wilson was something to behold. And again, like, this is a guy who's been around for the last 6 years with the Montreal Canadiens. And even in their 2021 playoff run, he was very important to that run, because even if he didn't impact the score sheet, he would be physical, he would be playing a strong defensive game. And ultimately, he was a guy that would put his heart on the line for the team. And when you have a guy like that that does that day in, day out, it rubs off on other players. Well, we're kind of seeing that renaissance in his game come back. He didn't really start the season off right. He's kind of trying to find his footing. He does have a young child at home, so he is kind of figuring out that balance. Always got to give a guy a little bit of leeway for that. And he's been able to come back over the last, I would say, 2 weeks. You know, for a guy that had about, I think, 1 goal late November, he's now at 8 goals on the season, trending for 20, and playing a crucial role on the penalty kill for the Canadiens, especially now that they've lost a guy like Jake Evans.
All right, which dance will we see tomorrow night? Is it going to be Anderson and Zadorov or Anderson and Jeannot? And then what's your final prediction for the bounce back?
It all depends on if Arbor Jacki dresses, because if Arbor Jacki dresses, I would very much love to see Zadorov versus Arbor Jacki, just as just a fun tilt, 2 behemoths. And I mean, Zadorov is an extremely intimidating person to just stand next to, so I could just imagine what that would look like. In terms of, I think both teams are going to try to play it safe, try to get a point. I think this ends up at OT. I'm going to say 4-3 for Boston at home.
All right.
Predicting a Boston win. He knows his audience. Marco D'Amico, again, the Star and D'Amico Show. It's right there on the hat. Check him out. We appreciate you, man. Look forward to talking again soon.
Always a pleasure, guys. Have a great one.